The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, I have my final quote-unquote spoiler from the upcoming Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG. The first of two upcoming big box releases, the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion will feature 5 new investigators and about 250 cards to expand your deck building options. Spoilers for the entire set have been leaked at this point if you know where to look, but I'm going to talk about today's card anyway since it's exciting and it will change the way that players build decks. A big thank you to FFG for providing the spoilers to the content creators in the Arkham Horror LCG community. The support is greatly appreciated. Speaking of support, if you enjoyed this type of content, let FFG know by remembering to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel immensely. Before I get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you the news, reviews, and playthroughs that I do on this channel. If you'd like to support the channel and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. Today's card is Geared Up. It's a permanent Guardian asset with the talent trait. It's limit 1 per deck, and you must purchase it at deck creation. It has the following forced effect. When your first turn of the game begins, play any number of item assets from your hand, reducing the cost of each by 1. During this turn, you have 3 fewer actions to take. If you enjoy building decks for the Arkham Horror LCG, Geared Up will keep you busy for months to come. With 18 plus Guardian and off-class Guardian investigators and more than 230 items to choose from, not including any new items in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion, there are a lot of possibilities to explore with Geared Up. The most obvious comparison to Geared Up is Ever Vigilant, a Guardian event from the Path to Carcosa Deluxe expansion. It's a free Guardian event that costs 1 experience point. It has 2 intellect skill icons and the tactic trait. You may use it to play up to 3 assets from your hand, reducing the resource cost of each by 1. Guardians can struggle in the resource department, and Ever Vigilant gives them a nice jump start if they can draw it early enough. The other option is to play it in combination with Stick to the Plan from the Black Stars Rise Mythos pack. Ever Vigilant has the tactic trait, so you may stack Ever Vigilant on it before drawing your opening hand, guaranteeing that you'll benefit from the resource reduction. That combination costs 7 experience points though, so it's not an option at the start of a campaign. That's certainly not the case with Geared Up, which gives Guardians and off-class Guardians the resource discount from the word go. However, Geared Up does have 2 caveats to keep it balanced. First, it's limited to item assets, and second, you have 3 fewer actions to take during your first turn. Geared Up's ability is a forced effect, so if you happen to get very unlucky and don't draw any item assets in your opening hand, you are screwed. Geared Up may be limited to item assets, but that's not really a problem, considering item is one of the most common traits in the game. It's worth noting that most of the item assets in the game require a hand slot, and you've only got 2 of those to work with at the start of a campaign. If you're bound and determined to play as many item assets as possible when your first turn begins, then you also need to consider items that either require the accessory or body slot, such as backpack, bandolier, fine clothes, or hallowed mirror. And don't forget there are a bunch of items such as handcuffs, riot whistle, painkillers, or smoking pipe that don't require slots at all. Like I mentioned earlier, there are literally hundreds of assets with the item trait, so I expect no 2 Geared Up decks will look alike. And don't forget there are a bunch of items such as handcuffs, painkillers, and smoking pipe that don't require slots at all. Like I mentioned earlier, there are literally hundreds of assets with the item trait, so I expect no 2 Geared Up decks will look alike. As for having 3 fewer actions to take during your first turn of the game, it's not as restrictive as it seems at first glance if you take advantage of certain Investigator abilities, Pretriggered Abilities, and fast events. For example, Leo Anderson's response enables him to play an ally asset after his turn begins, reducing that ally's cost by 1. If that ally happens to be Leo DeLuca, Leo can play items with Geared Up and still have an action to spare on his first turn. Skids O'Toole can do something similar, spending some of the resources that he saved playing item assets with Geared Up to use his Pretriggered ability to take an additional action during his first turn. Pretriggered abilities are another way investigators can squeeze a little more out of their first turn. Investigators such as Roland Banks and Joe Diamond can use Geared Up to play Cryptographic Cipher from the Innsmouth Conspiracy Deluxe expansion for 2 resources. then fire off the Cypher's free triggered ability to investigate. Once Joe Diamond has earned a few experience points, he could purchase the Necronomicon from the Harvey Walters starter deck, use Geared Up to play it for 2 resources, and then abuse its multitude of free triggered abilities. If a Guardian like Roland Banks really needs to get a head start on a scenario, he may want to consider triggering that police badge that he just played for 2 resources using Geared Up. Garrote Wire 2 and Sword Cane are a little more challenging to use effectively on your first turn, but you might be able to pick off a weak enemy that starts a scenario in play or an enemy spawned by another investigator before you take your first turn in multiplayer. Of course, if you get really lucky, you could play all 3 copies of Segment of Onyx, then trigger the Pendant of the Queen to move or discover a clue. Finally, there are cards with the fast keyword, such as Ace in the Hole, Cryptic Research, Shortcut, and Working a Hunch, that enable investigators to take additional actions, draw cards, move, and discover clues without taking actions. Are you playing a scenario in which an enemy or enemies start in play? Get Over Here 2 from the Nathaniel Cho starter deck is a fast way to move to an enemy up to 2 locations away and fight it after you're geared up. Of the 3 player cards that FFG gave me to spoil, Geared Up is far and away the most exciting because it has the greatest potential to shake up the way the game is played. If you enjoy the deck building aspect of this game, Geared Up gives you a massive sandbox to play in, and I haven't even touched on any of the player cards in the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion that are bound to synergize with it. If you purchase Gear Up at the deck creation, you'll need to play quite a few assets with the item trait to take advantage of the resource reduction when your first turn begins. In an ideal world, you'd like to play at least 3 items, but I don't think that I would be too upset if I was able to play only 2. Resource generation is a necessary evil in many a deck, and Guardians are no strangers to opening with emergency cash, asset. Leave a comment down below and let me know which investigator you are looking forward to gearing up when the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion is released. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromleng@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.